That's great. Thanks, Charles. Much appreciated. We've had a lot of talk today with a lot of interesting facts and a lot of statistics, which is really wonderful to see what was going on currently and what has happened in the past. Right now, we'll open up the discussion further now. Comments from Dr. Wang, would you like to talk about Hong Kong for a little bit?
Maybe you can send me. Okay.
Yes,
I will read one slide. Okay. I have prepared a slide, but I'd like to thank Mr. Lam for giving a very thorough and detailed review of what happened in the 1 year, and I admire the courage of our Hong Kong friends in their struggle against this dominating Chinese regime and their followers in Hong Kong, and I really wish them success. It is interesting that the poll conducted by the University of Hong Kong seemed to me that most people favor continuation of one system, one country, two systems. Although the younger people from 18 to 29 seem to identify themselves as the Hong Kong people instead of Chinese. This is very interesting comparing with Taiwan. I might be wrong, maybe one of my friends or some of friends can correct me, that usually the older people in Taiwan identify themselves, more of them identify themselves as Taiwanese. But the younger people may or may not be. This is very interesting to me. But I do have it. This is what I prepared, but may not be very relevant. One is I look at the Hong Kong future, seems to me is quite similar to the fate of Taiwan after World War II, although there are differences. One difference is the Hong Kong was handed over, not quite handed over, but still have some degrees of self-government right now. But Taiwan was completely handed over to Chiang Kai-shek. But from one colonial rule to another. And the second point is that it just happened, I think all reported in today's newspaper, that the Chinese Communist Party is planning to keep Xi in office forever by removing the two-term limit. This is very similar to not just Mao Zedong, also to Chiang Kai-shek, because they want to stay in the office forever. And that implies that their mentality or the manner that they want to rule the country are quite similar. And it will be very difficult for the people to struggle for their future. The other one, I think Mr. Lam already mentioned, because by reading newspaper, I knew that Hui Min-hai was kind of kidnapped. And this Li Min-zhou was from Taiwan. He was already sentenced. This is a very clear violation of human rights. This is my comment. Thank you.
Dr. Wang, I think, where's Ken? Oh, Ken. Ken Wu now is would like to comment about Hong Kong.
Actually, I just want to have a couple comments. I mean, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Charles Lam and also Dr. Wong for such an insightful presentation. I hope everybody in the audience here has learned much more about the situation than before. I would make a really quick comments about what I think is that I think there's a lot of political observers and pundits out there. They often claim that Taiwan and Hong Kong are sort of a political twins in a way. So a lot of people think that, you know what, Taiwan and Hong Kong, it could be compared in a way that, hey, maybe a Chinese system can work on Hong Kong, then maybe it can work in Taiwan. And often you can hear a lot of pro-China, or like maybe some Chinese political analysts will say like, if whatever China can do to make Hong Kong people like them, then Taiwanese will like them as well, and then perhaps one day they will be unified with China. What I want to say about that is that there's a lot of difference between Taiwan and China. For one thing, is political status. Hong Kong, fortunately, was for a very long period of time they had a British colonizer, British administration that was hopefully that was a lot better than Chinese administration, that granted them a lot of democracy and democratic development. So they appreciate the value of democracy and also the value of freedom, liberty, all those human rights values that we also sort of take for granted today. Taiwan, on the other hand, they were, like what Dr. Wang was saying, Professor Wang was saying, that they were handed over to Chinese regime after 1945. And with a lot of complex factors in, when Chinese took over, they started with fear, because when they acquired Taiwan, they don't regard them as Chinese people, regard them as Japanese people. These people walking around with, Asian face and walking in Japanese attire, they speak Japanese and they look a lot more like they're from Japan than from China. So it started with a fear for Japanese, since they felt that in the war. So they treated Taiwan with a very, very different kind of degree of severity, I guess. And later on they were also war battered, so they needed everything they can get from Taiwan to get them to survive in Taiwan. So there's a lot of political suppression, political persecution that followed through because of 228 incident. So for decades, Taiwan was living under martial law, was living under white terror. And people just, that sort of misunderstanding, that sort of conflict just never really gets resolved until today. We're still trying to resolve that. So Taiwan's democratic process was decades long and was painful, and people today, they remember how hard it was for them to get to the spot today. And Hong Kong people, they've been enjoying that for decades, and they lost it today. So I think that's one of the very big difference right now between Taiwan and Hong Kong. Another difference is the political sovereignty status. Taiwan was originally, part of China prior to the 1895 war, and after China lost to Japan in Sino-Japanese War, China ceded Taiwan to Japan in perpetuity, basically permanently to Japan. And during all those decades of ruling, Japan lost World War II finally, and because there was no clear China at that time, Japan basically formally renounced Taiwan. Taiwan became pretty much an independent, but nobody really owned them kind of status. So today, obviously, with the current international law, Taiwanese people get to decide. They're the owner of Taiwan. They get to decide the fate of Taiwan. But Hong Kong, on the other hand, British handed them over to China. So for them to get the kind of independence would be like the Taiwanese are pursuing a little bit hard. My comment, sorry for a very long background story, but my comment to that is, it is no secret that right now, Taiwan and Hong Kong are in the same boat when it comes to getting what they want. What they want is to have their basic rights, their basic human rights be guaranteed and also be protected. And with the current administration in Hong Kong, China is being so powerful today, it's really hard for a small Hong Kong with their own people to gather and then push the big Beijing. But Taiwan can definitely provide some sort of a sanctuary and provide some sort of assistance from our end, because we're already politically, economically, and in many aspects independent from China. And we're also extremely, extremely important when it comes to Chinese relations with the rest of the world. Every single time they talk to a country, the first thing they talk about is Taiwan. The last thing they talk about is Taiwan, because they don't have Taiwan, and they want Taiwan. And I think that's a very interesting spot for a lot of countries in the world when they discuss and when they have diplomatic relations with China. And that's something that Hong Kongers can take advantage of. when they move to Taiwan or when they have more close ties with Taiwan, because we can join force together and understand each other, and then hopefully we can support each other along the way and then get each one of us what we want. Thank you.
All right, so I think we can, there could have been more comments later on, but I think right now, I think it's, we've been going for a long time, for the last hour and 50 minutes, to figure out what was going on and kind of this long discussion. So I'd like to open up the floor for a lot of questions and answers. The panels here, Tony, Dr. Wang, Dr. Lam, Ken, and myself, we're all here for any discussions, and we can hash out anything with people that have questions that maybe we might have some answers to. I don't think, I'm not saying that we have the best answer. we may have an answer. And then we can open up discussion for everyone for us to think about before the end of the day.
Okay. Can I have one little tiny public announcement?
Yeah.
Just so that you know that some of you might have one sheet of paper like this in front of you. This is a petition for to our Senator Harris, to help get one of our an act that will be passed through, Taiwan Travel Act. It's already gone through the House with collective efforts of people in our community. We got the House to pass it, and now we're in Senate. The committee has unanimously passed it now, so now we need every senator's support all over the country to get this thing through. From Charles' presentation, we can see that U.S. as one of the flagship country in a free world, there's a lot of things they can do to help little guys like us that wants freedom, wants democracy. And so Taiwan Travel Act is something that would be able to help high-level executives, high-level government officials in Taiwan to gain meaningful meetings and also ties with high-level officials here in the U.S. Taiwan, as everybody knows, is not considered an independent country by the world, and for that reason, we're missed out. We missed out in a lot of opportunities to be a more meaningful partner with the world. And with this kind of act, if passed, then Taiwan would be able to work out a lot more things with high-level officials in U.S., and then hopefully it will be able to safeguard a lot of the interests of Taiwanese people and also the rest of the world as well. So just, if you're a California resident, if you're a voter, please kindly take a look at this petition and sign it, and we'll be collecting them at the end. Thank you.
Any questions? Yeah, go.
So, hello everybody. I'll short introduction of myself first. I'm a Taiwanese who work in Hong Kong, so I am very, fit to the topic today. And I do have two questions only. So, actually, I see. I work in Hong Kong, so I know Hong Kong's situation quite much, and great sharing, fully understand. And my office is at Causeway Bay, so I know all these like bookstore owners' situation. So I highly encourage, because if I can ask, could you please raise your hand if you know what happens to Gui Minhai? Okay, so nobody knows that, right? If you know, please try to Google it, and you will realize that that's something very horrifying. That's something what happens in the book 1984, the very famous novel, happens in real world. It's this reason shows up for him. It's I love or I love that. That's what happens. It's written in this very crazy society novel. So it's something we should all be aware of. That's a bad sign of how bad the human rights situation it is, or as long as you compare you deal with China government. But so first of all, trying to Google that and understand the situation, I think it will help all of us a little bit. And the question for me is, I think from now on, because the world has changed, so it's not very likely to have another 228 events or incident happening again, over any places around the world. But as long as the dictators they evolved, actually the form of this violence could be changed. And I kept thinking about what Dr. Lam said, the organic manner. What does that mean? But my question is to Dr. Wang and Dr. Lam, how you imagine this kind of violence in this era? How can China government use new form? Let's say, for example, Beijing, they're cleaning the city, right? They're cleaning it. And that's another way of violence that will move people away from the city anyways, and you're like out of the camera, out of the TV anyways, so you just disappear, right? So this kind of violence will keep happening around like Hong Kong and Taiwan through China's intentions anyways. But how would you imagine they would do it? Like, how can they still use their advantage of economy or any kind of power, or like they just even put more people in Hong Kong, right? So that's how I imagine about the organic. But how would you two think about the China government's way to violently changes?
You mean like? You should go.
Yeah, I guess. I'll go first. Well, the rhetoric of Chinese government in Hong Kong is that we'll never use physical acts of violence. And I believe when you talk about violence, it's about some other forms of violent acts. Well, this past year we've seen the mainland government using NPCSC or NPC, the National People's Congress, to reinterpret certain sections of the basic law, and I believe this is the way that they are going to keep using, because the basic law clearly states that NPCSC does have the ultimate interpretation of the basic law, and we have seen that they have basically twisted the language to a point that does not reflect the original language. And I believe this is what the way that they're going to do is to reinterpret it and then throw this to the court system in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong will eventually see a contradiction between the common law practice and the way that NPCSC is interpreting the law, that is going to create a lot of issues within the legal system. The next one we're likely going to see is the interpretation of the jurisdiction of land in the high-speed rail case that is likely going to happen. It has not happened yet because the Legislative Council has not legislated the legality of the joint checkpoint system. But once it's out, I believe that there is going to be a challenge on whether it violates the basic law. And one widespread belief is that there will be a court case to decide whether the Hong Kong Court of Final Appeal and the Hong Kong court system actually has the right to interpret the basic law as well as the NPCSC, or NPCSC is the only venue that can interpret this law. So we'll see how it goes. But if they're using this basic law to change the system in Hong Kong, right at this stage, as we see, there is actually very little protection to Hong Kong people and to the Hong Kong court system in general.
Thank you. I'm not sure I completely understand your point, but let me make the comment that, as I said, the poll of the conducted by the University of Hong Kong seems to indicate that over the 70% people favor one country, two systems. And this seems to me is a good starting point. This is different from Taiwan. I think more people in Taiwan would like to have independence. And but if I look at the 228 incident, the reason it erupted was because of the 16 months of suppression and culture shock and economic disaster. And the people just exploded. I think Hong Kong, our friends there are trying so hard. I hope this kind of situation will not get worse. That's what I hope for. And I know some of my friends who used to work for Taiwan independence, they thought if the Chinese government in Beijing would be able to go to the path of democratization in the future, then there's hope. I don't know. This is another possibility, and we cannot tell. And so my feeling is quite mixed. That's about it. Thank you.
Do you want me to comment at all? Because to be honest with you, one of the things, funny that you asked this question, because I actually, sorry, I think they're checking this comment here, because if you ever see how Tibet was taken over, it's, governments do two things. Either bribe you, or they beat you over the head. That's how they control. That's how they maintain control. That's how they want to maintain control. People who are leaders don't do it by force. People who are true leaders lead by example. People want them to be leaders. People who are dictators, they only want to be leaders because they're not real leaders. They don't want. There's a difference between someone who wants to be a boss and who wants to be a leader. The leader everyone wants to follow because they do good things and they say, "Hi, I believe in you." Right? Boss, the person says, "I'm the one that's most important. I'm the one that stays in power. I want to dictate everything." So it's very clear. To me, it's very clear that beating someone over the head with sticks or even shooting someone with a gun is the simplest way. Okay? It takes just as amount. It takes the same energy to actually dish out a lot of money. But if you have all these problems, and why they go away after a while is because someone gets bribed. That's the bottom line. Someone gets paid off. Okay? Stay quiet. Don't say anything. And money talks. To be honest with you, money talks. And in every situation, I don't care where you are around the world. Okay? Anytime there's a protest and you want to go away, you either beat the hell out of them right away, and then you pay them a lot of money to stay quiet. That's the fastest way to get things done. And then the government keeps on doing the same thing over and over and over again. So 1984 was right. It does work. And people still are. There's a big difference between the government and the people. And the people who want to follow them because either they're brainwashed or they don't care. Okay? Those are two options. Either brainwashed and they don't care. And if you say to me that, well, there's other reasons, no. Because if there was a reason, you either brainwashed or you don't care. Okay? And if you have to sacrifice, and other people won't sacrifice their family. They won't sacrifice their family members being hurt, so they'll do something. But in reality, their family would better love them if they actually stood up for what was right.
I think let's just throw this question out to make everybody think about what's actually still happening. The violence still happening from all around the places.
Oh yeah, all the time.
I think the topic we say the Taiwan 228 and the future Hong Kong 228 is not really mean barrier. Okay, Taiwan happened 1947. Really, Taiwan will kill over 20,000 to 30,000. 228 is kind of turn and say any kind of violence. It could be limiting your speech. Could be house arrest you. Could be put in the jail. Sometimes it's worse than killing. Like Taiwan now, President Chen, former President Chen, house arrest looks like it. They won't allow you to speak. They won't allow you to somewhere else. If you want to move from house to another house, you need to report to authorities. So that's I think this kind of form is still called 228. It's not called, you have to kill people. You have to, put it, just forced violence, to hurt people. We call it 228. But 228 it could be, arrest you. You cannot move 24 hours from here to this house. You cannot move from here to there. So every action you have, they totally control you. I think that's kind of, the 228 too. So I need to make clear. It's not mean the really 228 going to happen in the future in Hong Kong, but it happened because China Thai control the Hong Kong. So maybe another 20 years, there's still people that resist in China. They probably put in the jail. or probably, limit your action. All kind of activity, it could be happening in the future in Hong Kong, I believe. Thank you.
I think right now Hong Kong people are enjoying the economic prosperity that is brought by the influence from China. And China just every now and then throw a bone and give economic preferences or policies that help Hong Kong in a way. This is the way that they buy the hearts of Hong Kong people. But on the other hand, is that Hong Kong now is getting more and more integrated into the mainland Chinese economy. And so if there is economic downturn in China, I don't know how Hong Kong people will react, because last time this happened, that was during the SARS era in 2003, protests that come out and massive protests that come out. So in the next economic downturn, what's going to happen? It's anybody's guess.
Anyone else? Fred. Talk to me.
My question is, like, I think in Hong Kong, there's like a lot of voters or people, they think freedom of speech are like, they're entitled to it, they're not gonna like lose it or whatever, they don't care, their rights will not violate it again. So how do you get to them? Like, is your only hope is to wait for another economic downturn for people to get frustrated and they speak up, or like, if they're brainwashed, like, what can we do, or we just do nothing? Like, those people don't care.
Okay, fair enough, very well. There's a number one thing about freedom, okay? Freedom is not free. That's the one thing I say. Second thing is there's a book, there's a faculty member over at ASU. His name is Robert Cialdini. He writes a book called The Science of Influence. Okay, there's about 6 to 8 different types of categories you have to hit, and you hit any 4 of them, and you basically influence whoever it is. If you look at how any advertisement company gets people to buy their product, they follow those 8 rules or 6 to 8 rules every single time. Okay? Governments know how to follow those same exact rules of science of influence. It's basically persuading you to do one thing that you may not do every single day. Okay? And then that's how they get you. And the thing is that every government is trying to influence you to buy into certain things. Let's say, for example, for a car, for example. The advertisements in cars isn't for you to buy that car right now. It really isn't. It's really to show you that if you have that car, it's to reinforce you in the branding of that car. So if they're advertising your car that you already purchased, and you said, wow, I feel so proud, that's my car, right? The whole idea is branding. Governments do the same thing. Do you believe in the government? And they want you to believe in the government. What do they do so? They pay you money to have you feel like, hey, the government's always going to pay me. So that means you're dependent on government subsidies and so forth. When you are completely dependent on government, whatever they say, you have to do. So as long as people are still dependent and rely and demand on what the government can provide them, they'll continue being the lambs in a tiger world. Come on, I can't make one.
Well, there have been other theories by certain people in Hong Kong about how that change can be brought about, but they do not get a lot of wide support. As you see, one of the poll numbers saying that 84% of Hong Kong people do not believe independence is possible. And they're being highly practical and looking at just the basic resources like water, electricity, and all that stuff, and that they don't see a way out. This is basic infrastructure. And then on the second level of engaging in employment and economic activities, basically everything is dependent on PRC China at this moment. I think what Hong Kong people will do is when they see drastic changes that affects them, and as I said last time, there was SARS and then there was some radical movement, then they see that their rights are directly affected. But the complaint is one thing, and then eventually the idea, I think the mentality of general Hong Kong people is that they want to fight within the PRC system to gain as much rights they can within the PRC government, rather than separate as a distinct identity at this moment.
Just want to make a quick comment. Just so if people in the back just wondering if you guys could maybe sit, because right now we have a lot of empty seats in the front. So if you want to come up forward, it'll be a lot easier for us to cover. We don't bite, so.
I do.
I want to make just a couple feedback. I feel that economic prosperity, the level of economic success, or whatever the wealth level is you have, it's positively related to how much democracy, how much rights you want. If you are starving, if you are poor, if you basically you can't make ends meet, there's just a lot less that you'll be demanding. We can see from the past and the historic examples that communism, when it went about to rise, it's always easier to mobilize the volunteer of the social hierarchy, the laborers, people who live in poverty, because all they want is really a bowl of rice. Well, all they want is just really not starve anymore. Once we move on to a higher level of human development, once we have higher standard of living, then people decide to have more, because now I'm not starving. Now I have clothes to wear, I'm not cold, I have a place to live. I want more. I want to have social life. I want to be able to go around and say what I want to say. And that becomes a problem when people enjoying that high level of economic prosperity for a while, and all of a sudden has that taken away. And I think that's one of the things that Hong Kong is experiencing right now. It's that they have such a great economic success. Even Chinese government were really proud of being #1 economic freedom. So people are so they enjoy that high level of economic success, and now they feel that they cannot use that sort of resource and wealth that they have to do that could promote, perhaps their quality of life, or maybe their cultural promotion, or maybe some other ideologies they may have. So I think one of the participants was saying about other forms of violence that government can pump people, and I believe that's one of the violence that could happen in the future, is that government knows that exactly what is that you're after, and they also know what exactly they can't give you in case it goes out of control. So the challenge that people have is do we always want to pursue a goal that will eventually restrict what we eventually go after? So let's say if Taiwan's faced with this dilemma all the time, do we want to go for independence or do we not? If we go for independence, do we lose our economic success? Do we lose our economic status? But if you don't have that, if you have that, then you won't have the kind of human rights, you won't have the kind of ideology you want to pursue in the future. Is it really worth it? So I think that people today would probably need to be able to. We probably would be able to. We'll probably want to have more discussions, more panels just like this one, to kind of understand what everybody wants. And it's not as simple as in the past anymore, where everybody in the poor area just really wants not starve, or everybody here just really wants to be regarded as the same as the majority of the population. So with more influx of Hong Kong migrants to Taiwan, and with more interactions between the two sides, Taiwanese might be able to gain more perspective on just what other ethnicity or maybe what other cultural group may want in terms of the balance of economic success and also human rights. But another thing I would pretty want to propose to Charles Lam is, I saw the poll on Hong Kong's identity. Now we all understand that in Hong Kong, in order to become a Hong Konger, you just have to live 7 years in Hong Kong, regardless of where you're born, and then you're officially a resident of Hong Kong. And in Taiwan, it's a lot more difficult. People who people here, a lot of the Taiwanese people were fortunate enough to be born in Taiwan, so we born as Taiwanese person. But for people who are born elsewhere or not Taiwanese to begin with, to naturalize in Taiwan is actually a lot more difficult, much more difficult than a lot of countries in the world. So I'm kind of curious, as people who responded to the post, are they, do you guys have a more in-depth analysis on, were they born in Hong Kong already, or were they like the newcomers? And also another thing is, like, do you feel that there's a discrepancy in sort of their views between those people who were born in Hong Kong and people who were not?
Okay, so I don't have the details of the data. Those data were provided by University of Hong Kong, public opinion, policy of public opinion, something like that, exchange report. And they have a full data set there for everyone to log into. So if you're interested, you can actually play with the data and download the data, just analyze as much as you wanted. So I do not know. However, as you might know that the Hong Kong immigration policy is actually mostly not controlled by Hong Kong government. It's actually controlled by PRC government, especially for the people coming in from mainland China. Hong Kong government actually has no say on who gets to come in to become Hong Kong residents. However, the interesting thing is that 18 to 29 demographic includes a lot of those people. And in fact, some of the loudest activists in the past few years, especially during the umbrella movement, they were children of new immigrants. And they themselves might also be new immigrants themselves. They came at a young age. And after 5, 10 years, they become a full Hong Kong person. And they fight for Hong Kong people's rights as if they're just like any other Hong Kong people.
May I add one more thing? I think one interesting thing is if you want to come to Hong Kong to study university from, let's say, Beijing, from Shanghai, then actually it requires you to be the very top. Like, you have to be able to get into Beijing 大学, Tsinghua 大学, so you can move to Hong Kong to study. So I do have a lot of colleagues in Hong Kong. They are actually born in Beijing and Shanghai. They're all great talents. But I think one interesting thing is, for them, it's a filter. Like, if they decided to come to Hong Kong to study there, they're kind of saying no to China already. Because if they stay in Beijing University, Tsinghua University, they're supposed to be also at the top of the society in China. So it's interesting that all these people, they maybe born there but decided to leave, so they had the chance to study in Hong Kong and kind of really not moving back. Yeah, so yeah, that's just one to add on this point.
Okay, we're actually past our time frame. I want to thank all our panelists for being here. Really appreciate the discussion. It was very entertaining for me. I loved everything, the historical facts, data. It was very informative for me as well, even though I know a lot of this history, I know a lot of the current events. Even though I really enjoyed looking at this information, I really appreciate all of you audience members for coming as well today. We'll end it off today. Thank you for coming, and we will, we're here so we can open for discussion privately. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.